Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Tuesday, April 12th, 2022, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we celebrate because the Orioles got their first win of the 2022 season, winning the home opener by a score of 2-0 over the Milwaukee Brewers. And on today's episode, I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' home opening win over the Brewers. We'll talk about the roster moves the Orioles made before the game against Milwaukee on Monday. And then we'll look ahead to the rest of this series with the Brewers and talk about if the O's can win their first series of the season. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So everyone rejoice. The Baltimore Orioles are no longer the only winless team in baseball. That's right. After the first weekend series, the only team to get swept this year was the Orioles in the 3-game series against the Rays. Everybody else in baseball had a win. And now all 30 teams in baseball have a win as the Orioles win the home opener 2-0 over the Milwaukee Brewers. And I'm going to get to the 5 things you need to know from that Orioles victory. But first, just wanted to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. Locked On Orioles is free and available on all podcast listening platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, wherever you might listen. And also, remember, we are on YouTube. Free and available right here on YouTube. If you're watching, hit that red subscribe button right there. If you so please do so. Really, really helps out the pod. And again, we thank you so much. So many new subscribers over the past couple of days. So many new followers on Twitter over the past couple of days. You can follow us at Locked On Orioles for a lot of Orioles content throughout the season. And again, check out the podcast on Apple Pods and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating and a review there if you can. That really, really helps out the pod. But again, couldn't be doing this without you all. So thank you so much again for making Locked On Orioles your first listen of the day. And for your first listen today, the Orioles are victors. 1-3 on the season after a 2-0 win over the Milwaukee Brewers. And we start with the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles win over Milwaukee in the home opener at Camden Yards in front of pretty much a packed house here in 2022. And the first thing you need to know, Bruce Zimmermann was great with the pressure on and the lights the brightest in a start that meant so much to him on the hill. Zimmerman's final line in his first start of 2022, 4 scoreless innings, allowing just 3 hits. He struck out 4, he walked 2, he threw 66 pitches in his 4 innings of work. And for Bruce Zimmermann, obviously, it was such a special day because he's the hometown kid from Ellicott City, played at Loyola Blakefield, played at Towson for a bit before transferring to the D2 level and then getting drafted by the Braves. But for Bruce Zimmermann, first Orioles starter on the home opener that's from Maryland in a while. And just a really cool moment for Bruce. He talked about after the game how actually Sunday night when the Orioles got back in from Tampa, he kind of snuck out onto the field at Camden Yards just to get on the mound and kind of, go through some scenarios, calm his nerves a bit. It definitely helped him out. And what was really working for Bruce was that changeup. Now for Bruce Zimmermann, he's similar to John Means in that he's a fastball changeup guy, but he's always thrown a lot of that slider as well. Well, the slider usage was actually way down in this game. Of his 66 pitches, he threw just 8 sliders on the day. And really, he went to that changeup a lot. It was 29 four-seam fastballs, about 44% of the time. And, he was averaging 91. He was up towards 93 at the most. But the changeup was his number 2 pitch. He threw 17 changeups, 26% of the time. And now, listen, he only got 4 whiffs on the day, not a crazy amount of swings and misses, but 2 of them came on the changeup. The changeup was in the zone a lot. How about this? Of 17 changeups, he got 2 whiffs and he got 7 called strikes on that pitch to go along with 2 foul balls. The ball was also put in play 3 times that resulted in an out. That was a dominant pitch for Bruce Zimmermann. And, I wonder if he has been kind of talking with John Means at all about how he throws his changeup, because Bruce's changeup looked a lot like Means's did on Friday in Tampa. It's that lefty change that's, got a good amount of difference in velocity, but not a crazy amount. I mean, his fastball averaged 91, his changeup averaged 84. So it's not a crazy drop off at 7 miles per hour, But what it did have for Bruce is that tailing action. It dives down and away from righties and down and into lefties. And the way Bruce threw that changeup so well today is that he was throwing it for strikes on the inner half to righties. Now, he used it mostly against right-handers. And against righties, he would throw a lot of changeups where the pitch would kind of start off the inside corner to a righty, and it would dive back into the inside corner for a called strike. And then to get them to swing and miss, he would throw the changeup that would start at the knees on the outside corner and just kind of dive down and away from a right-hander. He had the changeup command looking pretty good. And if you pitch into a righty with that changeup, things can get bad. Jim Palmer talked about it on the broadcast, how, that's a really good pitch, him throwing that down and in change. But if he leaves it up at all, it becomes a real issue. But he never did. He kept it down. And that pitch, frankly, was dominant on the day. And that is the reason why he was able to roll through the game. He threw the curveball and he threw the slider, but he was a fastball changeup guy. And those 4 innings were really impressive from Bruce Zimmermann. Second thing you need to know from the Orioles win over the Brewers, the bullpen once again was nails. And of course, the entire Orioles staff pitched a combined shutout here, but the Orioles bullpen was fantastic. It kept them in the game over the weekend against the Rays, and they just continued that momentum into this game and this home opener against Milwaukee. How about Mike Baumann to start it off? Baumann comes out there in the 5th after Bruce Zimmermann is done, makes his season debut. The stuff was looking good for Mike Baumann. He throws 2 1/3 scoreless, allowing just 1 hit, struck out 3 and walked 1 through 37 pitches through that stretch. The fastball was not the fastball we saw from Baumann in the bigs last year. It was back and even better than the Baumann fastball we knew. We knew, coming up through the minors that Baumann had a big-time fastball, and, if he ever came out of the bullpen, it would, play up even more. But he throws 37 pitches, 29 of them were fastballs. He was averaging 97. He was up above 98. And when you compare that to his numbers from last year, that is up more than 3 miles per hour on average. That's pretty good. And again, he was still coming back fully from injury at the end of last year, but Baumann was throwing 97, 98 regularly and was throwing mostly fastballs. It was 27 or 29 fastballs. He threw 7 curveballs and 1 slider. And, those pitches didn't get, the big swings and misses he wanted, but he got 3 whiffs on the fastball. He threw it. He was a little erratic with the command of that fastball. I'll tell you that from watching the game. He wasn't perfect on command. He was kind of yanking it down in that 5th inning. He was trying to throw at the knees. He was yanking it below the knees. He was leaving it up high. But the velocity was good, and he was able to get guys out over 2 1/3. And that's the kind of piggyback the Orioles need, especially early in the season when they're still trying to stretch these starters out like Bruce Zimmermann. Brandon Hyde said he'd probably go 4 to 5 innings. He goes 4 innings. They got to have a piggyback guy. And what they didn't have Sunday because Dean Kremer got hurt was a piggyback guy. That's what they had on Monday. Mike Baumann, 2 1/3. It was great. Dylan Tate came in after Baumann, and, his stuff wasn't his best. I will tell you that right now. But it's a good sign for Tate that even though he didn't have his best stuff, he did his job. He got the 2 outs he needed to finish off the 7th. Then they went to Cionel Perez, who had been locked down in spring training and early this season, throws a scoreless 8th with a strikeout. Here's the big thing for Perez. He only needed 9 pitches, so he should be good to go here for Tuesday's game as well. I mean, Perez just walked out of the bullpen, said, "Here I come," and he threw 5 fastballs and 4 sliders and left them out. He was throwing 96, 97, and got the outs that he needed, got a strikeout, and looked pretty good doing it. And then kind of the big thing from the bullpen, Jorge Lopez gets the Orioles' first save chance of 2022. Now, obviously, bullpen roles changed when the Orioles traded Cole Sulser and Tanner Scott to the Marlins last week. But how about Jorge Lopez coming in? Now, he does issue a 1-out walk, but he ends up getting a couple more outs. He gets a strikeout in the inning, throws 15 pitches, gets the save, and the Orioles win the game 2-0. And again, the velocity was up just like it was over the weekend for Jorge Lopez coming out of the bullpen. And, he was throwing that sinker. It was averaging 98 miles an hour, and it was looking good. He was throwing the changeup. The changeup was looking good at about 91. He threw the curveball in there. I like Jorge Lopez in the bullpen. I like this current Orioles bullpen. It was good stuff today. Third thing you need to know from this one is that Cedric Mullins got the big hit. And that was big for him because I wouldn't call it a slump to start the season. It was only 3 games, but he was struggling a little bit. And hey, he only went 1 for 5 today. He did strike out twice. He struck out a lot so far this season. His average is at 188. But Cedric Mullins got the big hit in this game, came up with the bases loaded and 2 outs in the second inning and delivered a 2-run single into center field off of Brewers starter Adrian Hauser. Jorge Mateo, who was just electric in this one, able to score on the hard hit ball and was fired up as he crossed home plate, sliding him just barely past the tag of the catcher, Victor Caratini. And, it was fun to watch Mateo get in there. It was fun to watch Mullins come up with his first big hit of the season, had so many of them last year, and this should propel him back into what we saw last year. It was great. And, the O's got 2 runs in the second. You thought, all right, nice, jump out to a lead. Ended up being the only runs in the game. Fourth thing you needed to know, Anthony Santander is on a mission right now. He knows he had the good 2020, cut short by the injury. He knows he had multiple injuries in 2021, never got going. He is hotter than pretty much anybody else in baseball to start 2022. I think the only hotter hitter right now in the game is Steven Kwan, who's doing ridiculous things for the Guardians right now. Santander reaches base all 4 times he's up there. A single, a double, and 2 walks. He's now hitting 500 through 4 games this season with a 1567 OPS. That's pretty good. And these weren't just excuse me bloop singles. Both of those hits he had, the single and the double, I should say, were hard hit balls. That's a ball off the bat, 95 miles per hour or more. That's pretty good from Santander. He looks solid moving around in right field. He did get replaced by Ryan McKenna in right as a defensive replacement in the 9th, but that doesn't even have to do with Santander's health or anything. It's just that Ryan McKenna is the best defensive outfielder maybe on the team, and so that's an easy replacement to make if you have him on your bench. But Santander is swinging it really, really well. And, this is a conversation for later podcasts, but is he making it easier for the Orioles to trade him? Or is he making it harder for them to trade him, wanting to hold on to him, and harder for them to find a way to get Kyle Stowers, Yusniel Diaz, Robert Newstrom to the bigs? I mean, Santander playing well can only help the Orioles, and I hope he continues to hit like this because it has been fun to watch Anthony Santander. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 2-0 win, it was just awesome to have a full Camden Yards. We really didn't get it much last year because there was the kind of abbreviated attendance rules at the beginning of last season. And obviously the Orioles were terrible last year, so not a lot of big crowds. But to see, full capacity, and the stadium was not a sellout. The Orioles announced a sellout. There were empty seats, but it was pretty full, and it was the fullest it's been probably since around the beginning of the 2019 season. The crowd was loud. Brandon Hyde said, the Cedric Mullins 2 RBI single was some of the loudest he's ever heard Camden Yards, and that's believable. He's only been the manager for these terrible teams since 2019. And that was cool. The crowd erupted on the Jorge Lopez final out. They were fired up for some plays the Orioles made, some big outs that Bruce Zimmermann got. It was just really fun to see a lot of people at the yard. Now, I was not at the yard. I will be there on Wednesday night, but it was fun to watch. There was energy, and we need that back sooner rather than later. But the Orioles win it 2-0 over the Brewers. A fun opening day in Baltimore as the O's get on the board, now 1-3. On the season. But that wasn't the only thing going on in Oriole land on Monday, as they also made some roster moves before Monday's game because they had an unfortunate injury in the bullpen on Sunday. And we'll talk about that and how that changes the roster moving forward here in just a second. But first, hey, I'm sure many people saw the Milwaukee Brewers, a World Series contender, taking on the Baltimore Orioles on Monday and said, you know what? Let me bet on the Brewers to win this game. And those people would have lost money. And if you would like to do the same thing today and maybe risk losing some more money, head over to betonline.net because they've got all your sports wagering needs. But it's not just the bets you can place over there. They've also got podcasts you can check out, just like this one. They've got sports news to figure out, who's injured, who you may want to place a wager on. They've also, just got everything you need. You can check the scores at betonline.net as well. It's your one-stop shop. Plus, you've got baseball season. You've got the NBA playoffs starting tonight with the play-in. NHL playoffs start soon. Things are heating up in the sports world, and you can go and check out some wagers at betonline.net. You can also play your favorite Vegas casino games right from the comfort of your own home. So head over to betonline.net, where the game starts. So the Orioles beat the Brewers 2-0 on Monday in the home opener, and it was with a different roster than they played with this weekend. It took them 3 games, and they already were kind of forced to make some roster moves before Monday's game, and just wanted to kind of break those down here as we go. And let's start with kind of what prompted it all. And that was Dean Kremer. Mentioned it briefly on Monday's episode. I was recording kind of just after we found out that Dean Kremer had tweaked his oblique while warming up in the bullpen in Sunday's game against the Rays. He was the planned follower, the bulk guy to come in behind Tyler Wells after Wells made his first career start on Sunday. Obviously, Wells only lasted an inning and 2/3. Felix Bautista was kind of the sandwich guy, got 4 outs. And Brandon Hyde was ready to go to Dean Kremer to try and get about 3 innings out of him out of the bullpen. But Kremer was warming up, and then all of a sudden he wasn't warming up. And we wondered why. Well, we learned why after the game. Dean Kremer felt something in his oblique that's, kind of the midsection, and he is not able to enter the game. Orioles have to piece it together bullpen-wise. And it comes out that Kremer's got an oblique injury. The Orioles placed him on the injured list on Monday, and he's going to miss at least a month, it sounds like. So all of a sudden, a big season for Dean Kremer, big that he makes the opening day roster. He doesn't even get to pitch. That would have been his season debut on Sunday, and now he's already on the injured list. So first of all, from the Dean Kremer sense, that sets him back a good amount, because while he's on the injured list, these guys like, a Baumann on Monday, a Keegan Aiken on Saturday, even the guys who came up, who we'll talk about in a second, they're all getting their chance, and a Bruce Zimmermann as well. They're all getting their chance to kind of show what they can do, these middle pack of starters, and Dean's not going to get that chance. It's not even like he's at Triple-A like Zach Lowther is. At least Lowther is at Triple-A and can get some innings. Dean can't get anything, unfortunately. He's out with an oblique, and these oblique injuries are always tricky. Some guys are able to come back fairly quickly and be okay, but there's been a lot of guys who have those oblique injuries linger on because it's your midsection, and, every baseball motion you do, you use the obliques, and when they're injured, you need them to be at 100% to perform. And sometimes, it's just not, it's at 80% and you still can't go. And sometimes those injuries last a while. So hopefully that's not the case for Dean, but it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts him and the Orioles. But in terms of the injury, the Orioles obviously had to bring up another pitcher, and they had to bring up another starting pitcher, because even though Dean wasn't specifically in the starting rotation, he looked like kind of the follower bulk guy for Tyler Wells, and they needed a guy who could give him some distance. So you look down at Triple-A and you kind of had 4 options, I would say: Spenser Watkins, Chris Ellis, Zach Lowther, and Alexander Wells. And obviously Wells and Lowther were easier because both of them were on the 40-man. And of course you had Ellis and Watkins in Triple-A, but not on the 40-man roster. So what the Orioles did first, actually, over the weekend, was they actually put Isaac Mattson through waivers. The reliever who came over from the Angels in the Dylan Bundy deal. He'd been on the 40-man roster, pitched in a couple games in the bigs last year before getting injured, having some off-the-field stuff. But for Isaac Mattson, kind of unbeknownst, he went through waivers, actually cleared waivers, and went down to Triple-A and was cleared off the 40-man roster. So the Orioles were playing over the weekend with 39 players on their 40-man roster. So they did have an opening. So it made it easier to add a guy to the 40-man. So that guy that got added and got called up was Spenser Watkins. And I know Spenser didn't have the greatest season in 2021 with the Orioles after they signed him to a minor league deal and he got to the big leagues, but he was serviceable at times. He had a really good start to the season. If you remember, those first couple outings were pretty good. He had that good start against the Rays as well. So, hey, maybe he can throw that together a little bit. Now, he hasn't pitched at Triple-A this year, but last year with the Orioles, 16 games, 10 starts. He had an 8.07 ERA in 52 2/3 innings with the Orioles. He did get hit around a bunch at times, ended up with about 6 Ks per 9, 3 walks per 9 in those about 55 innings. Stuff wasn't great. About a 90-mile-per-hour fastball, throws a cutter with a breaking ball. But for Watkins, he'll be up there for long relief help. And then there was the other guy, because you add Watkins, you're back to 28 guys. He takes the open 40-man spot. He takes Kremer's spot. But the Orioles felt that with Dean Kremer going down, not with a regular one-inning reliever going down, with one of their bulk relievers going down, and with their starters, not built up to go 5, 6, 7 innings yet, they felt like they needed another pitcher, and another starting pitcher or bulk pitcher at that. And honestly, I kind of agree. So after Sunday's game, the Orioles sent DJ Stewart down to Triple-A Norfolk. Now, he still has the 1 option year remaining, so they were able to send him down without DFAing him or placing him on waivers. He just goes straight to Norfolk. And Brandon Hyde said that DJ Stewart took it in stride. There wasn't any hard feelings, and then he went down. He's obviously going to tell the media that, even that if it wasn't the case. But Stewart, after an 0-for-3 weekend, in which he pinch hit in the ninth inning in all 3 games against Tampa, struck out twice and flew out once, so went 0 for 3 with the 2 Ks, goes down to Triple-A without even making a start this season, and the Orioles added another pitcher in Alexander Wells. And, we know Wells from last season, one of the Orioles' top 30 prospects. He came up last year and was up and down at the end of the year, made 11 appearances, 8 starts for the Orioles last season, had a 6.75 ERA in 42 2/3 big league innings last year for the O's. It was about, again, 6 Ks per 9 and 3 walks per 9, kind of similar stats, maybe a little better than Spenser Watkins. And we all know I like Alexander Wells. It's got the 89-mile-per-hour fastball. It's that big looping 70-mile-per-hour curveball that he can drop in for a strike at any time to go along with his changeup and his slider. And so that kind of leaves the question, what is the O's plan now? Because you replace Stewart and you replace Kremer and you put Watkins and Wells on the roster. But as of recording this here late Monday evening, there has still been no starting pitcher named by the Orioles for the game on Tuesday. And the question kind of becomes, who's pitching? And that question's kind of been answered because Baumann was used in bulk on Monday, and Keegan Aiken could probably pitch in Tuesday's game, but he probably wouldn't start considering the 3 innings he threw on Saturday. And that's just 2 full days of rest. So at the end of the day, the starter is either going to be, it sounds like, Alexander Wells or Spenser Watkins, with the other guy being kind of the bulk follower. And Wells has already made 1 appearance at Triple-A Norfolk this year. He threw 4 scoreless innings last week, struck out 3, walked 1, and gave up 1 hit. The stuff looked good in Wells' first appearance at Triple-A, so that's good. He's already got that feeling. Again, Watkins hadn't pitched, but, for the Orioles, they kind of had to call up those guys because, they had this plan, I'm sure, and this plan went out the window a little bit because Kremer got injured. And so I would expect to see the Wells and Watkins combination, and we will see if that's it, but that's what the moves look like. And we'll also see if DJ Stewart stays in AAA for a while, if he comes back up. With him being the guy getting optioned and with the Orioles wanting to carry more pitchers now with Dean out, it's kind of a tough avenue right now for Stewart to get back to the big leagues because you remember, the 28-man roster will shrink to 26 at the end of April. The Orioles are fine with a 4-man bench right now. Stewart made it a 5-man bench. They're perfectly fine with a 4-man bench. They need the pitching more, I think. Could be tough for DJ Stewart to get back to the big leagues. But my guess would be Wells and Watkins, kind of your 2 starter A, starter B, opener, follower, whatever you want to call it, for Tuesday's game. And coming up, we'll talk a little bit more about Tuesday's game and the rest of this series against the Brewers. But first, if you're heading down to Camden Yards for one of these games and you're driving to the ballpark, you obviously want your car to be working correctly, but sometimes you need new parts for your car. Well, that's where RockAuto.com comes in. And the best part about RockAuto.com, there's so many parts, so many different parts for all these new cars. It gets confusing. And if you go into a chain dealership or, just a regular auto parts store, they're going to try to big time you. They're going to try and tell you that they know more than you do, and you're just going to get confused and want to leave. It's not the case with RockAuto.com. They've got low prices, great customer service, been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and they're a family-run business as well. I don't know anything about cars, but I can log on to RockAuto.com, and I can find all the parts I need for my car. It's fantastic. So if you're looking for parts for your car, head to rockauto.com and write Locked On Orioles in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. So it's the O's and the Brewers and 2 more games coming up this week. Of course, tonight, Tuesday night, and then Wednesday night when I will be at the ballpark for the first time in 2022. But again, when you're listening to this, the Orioles would have probably already named a starter, but as I'm recording here, just shy of 8 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, they haven't named anyone yet, but I would expect it to be kind of either Alexander Wells or Spenser Watkins and the other one following. On the Brewers side for the Tuesday night game, it is Eric Lauer who will make the start, the 26-year-old left-hander who had a 3.19 ERA in about 119 innings of work for the Brewers last season, mostly as a starter, but he did work out of the bullpen some. He's their number 5 starter, but he's honestly one of the best number 5 starters in baseball. Brewers have a lot of depth in their rotation, and Lauer was pretty good last year, 117 Ks in those 119 innings. He's got, it's not a flame-throwing lefty. He's more of a soft tosser, but he has really good stuff. He's a really big-time control pitcher. And he's one of those pitchers who, you watch him pitch and you don't think he's going to be dominant, but then he frustrates you. And all of a sudden you look up, he's thrown 6 innings, given up 1, maybe 2 runs, and you don't understand how. He's one of those guys. And Lauer, the lefty, will face presumably a righty-heavy lineup for the Orioles. But then we go to Wednesday, and I'm excited to go to this one, not just because it's my first game at the Yard this year, but it is a true ace-off on Wednesday. The reigning NL Cy Young winner is coming into Baltimore as Corbin Burnes is going to get the start on Wednesday night. The 27-year-old righty who won the NL Cy Young with the Brewers in 2021 had just an unbelievable season in Milwaukee. 28 starts, a 2.43 ERA last season. Didn't walk anybody for like 2 months to start the year. But Burnes didn't have his best stuff on opening day against the Cubs. 5 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 4 Ks, and 3 walks. He walked a batter in the first inning against the Cubs. Again, he didn't walk a batter for like his first 5 or 6 starts last year. So maybe a little bit of a less effective Burnes will go up against John Means, who, of course, threw the 4 innings of 1-run ball on opening day against the Rays. I'm very excited for that one on Wednesday as well. But just wanted to talk through the rest of the series because, if the Orioles are going to beat this Brewers team, the way that they did it on Monday is kind of how they're going to have to do it. The Brewers have a fantastic starting rotation. I mean, 1 through 5. You talk about Burnes, Woodruff, Peralta, then Hauser, who we saw Monday, and Lauer, who the Orioles will see on Tuesday night. In terms of depth, that's some of the best 1 through 5 in all of baseball, and that's what got the Brewers to the NL Central title last year. That's what's continued to get them to the playoffs the last couple of years. But what they don't do well is hit. They play really good defense. We saw that. My goodness, Tyrone Taylor robbing Trey Mancini and basically robbing everyone, it seemed like, in the game on Monday. Their pitchers were making great plays defensively as well. The Orioles had 4 hard hit balls that should have been hits and turned into outs, which was really annoying on Monday. They play good defense. They pitch well, but the offense isn't great. And obviously their big bat is Christian Yelich, but he's really struggled, struggled last year, hasn't gotten off to a hot start this year. They obviously added Hunter Renfroe, who the Orioles know from his days with the Red Sox and the Rays, but he didn't have any moments on Monday. And the way to beat the Brewers is just to get enough runs off one of their pitchers, whether it be their starter like the Orioles did, get the 2 runs off Hauser in the second, or just off one of the relievers. Now, their bullpen is rested because Aaron Ashby was the long reliever, relieved Hauser and pitched most of the game. Then they went to Jandel Gustav in the 8th inning. But generally, they did save the bullpen. So, we didn't see Josh Hader or Devin Williams or, even Brad Boxberger, their 3-headed monster at the back end of the bullpen. So you will see them. So if you get down early to the Brewers, it can be tough. But what you need to do, the Brewers, exactly what the Orioles did. Get an early lead. They got 2 runs in the second, took the lead. And the Brewers offense, a lot of times, is not going to beat you. And so it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this series plays out. But again, game tonight for the Orioles, 7:05. And we'll see who's on the mound for the O's. But they have a chance to win a series and stay undefeated at home in tonight's game. And then we'll be back on the pod tomorrow. I'll be breaking down everything you need to know from game 2 of the series between the Orioles and the Brewers. And then on tomorrow's pod, I'm going to take a little look back at the Orioles offseason because as we saw, especially from the series in Tampa, the Orioles' major league talent is not really up to snuff. And I'll talk about why this offseason, even though the O's weren't trying to win, was still a failure from Mike Elias and his staff. But that's all coming up on tomorrow's episode of the podcast. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.